Welcome back to Shoe Leather Faith. I'm Robert McMillan, and we're here to focus in on day 3 of the creation week. 6 contiguous 24-hour days in which God created everything that you can see and sense around you. And on the 7th he rested. We're going to be looking today at the final day of God's preparation of planet Earth. Not the final day of preparation, because that's on the 4th day, tomorrow. On the 4th day, God creates the stars, the planets, the sun and the moon. And he's got a purpose in that. But that's on the 4th day. But now he's finalizing this planet so that it can possess and maintain life, particularly our life. But before we get into that, I'd like to introduce you to someone I know. Bob. This is Bob, and I call him Bob the Tomato because he's such a great guy. This is a tomato that was purchased at a farmer's market here in town. And when you slice it open, it's just running with juice, and you pop it in your mouth, or bits of it in your mouth, it tastes beyond delicious. And it's so far superior to any tomato you'll buy in a store. It's worth paying $1 a piece for these guys at a farmer's market, because they taste the way you think tomatoes ought to taste, the way they tasted when I was a kid and they didn't know how to pick them green and sell them to you unprepared for eating. I used to live in an area where they had a lot of tomato growing, and you see the trucks driving off either to the stores or to the processing plants, and all the tomatoes were absolutely green. Green. In other words, they'd been picked before they were ripe. This little baby was picked ripe, and you cut it open and it's like eating a candy bar. Not exactly, but it's close to a candy bar. So this tomato is nowhere near as delicious as the tomato that God created when he first created all the plant life. When we get to heaven, we'll sit down and we'll go to the tomato patch, and we'll each pick a tomato and we'll sit and enjoy it and say, man, that is a tomato. Much better than Bob. Anyway, but why is Bob not such a great tomato? And yet, to our taste, he is a great tomato. Let me just read you a verse from Romans 8 and verse 20. For the creation was subjected to futility. In other words, it's decaying. Not willingly, but because of the one who subjected it in hope. Because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption, that's decay, into the glorious liberty of the children of God. So, when we get glorified, when we enter heaven, tomatoes are entering too. And they'll be great tomatoes. And yet, in the meantime, God's given us lovely fruit to eat. I can't wait to eat that later on today. It's going to be a meal. And people say, oh, have you had your lycopene today? And I'll be able to say, yeah, I just ate Bob the tomato. Now let's look into what plants need. Because on that 3rd day, God planted them, and everything was prepared for them to survive until the next day, when there was all the other stuff going on. And the day after, forget that. Now, what do plants need? Well, I'll tell you what they need. They need topsoil. Today, I got to go down to the nursery and buy bags of topsoil. Yeah, dirt. Because the dirt around where we're at isn't really dirt. It's just silt. It's clay. And plants don't like it. When we planted our garden, and there's tomatoes and jalapeno peppers and green peppers and all kinds of stuff, carrots, we had to buy dozens and dozens of these bags of potting soil because something was lacking. And it was the same thing that was lacking when God created all that soil on that third day. And I've got something that God didn't put in the soil on that third day, and here it is. It's called compost. Now you don't want to touch it like I did, so I'm going to have to boil my hands to get it clean. But there's all kinds of rot. There's banana peels and you name it, food scraps. But as you can see, if I can turn this, it's turning nice and black, and it looks like topsoil. But the thing is, the soil at the time was so full of nutrients that it didn't need this. After God created the trees and such, and the shrubs and the grass, they've started producing their own material that became compost or mulch and a rich topsoil. Well, that's how all the fruits and vegetables and flowers grow around here, and these are just one of many baskets of flowers that my wife has planted, and they're just thriving. But we have to feed them. But God provided that, and He provided it through these guys producing their own food. They take the sunlight, the energy from the sun, it's photosynthesized, and they're able to bring up moisture and nutrients from the soil and produce their own vegetable life. So that's how that goes. The plants that God created weren't just tasty, they were also beautiful. And I hope you realize the aesthetic as well as the nutrient value of all these things that God created on that third day. He created the grasses. Well, why was that? Because in a couple of creative days, He's going to produce animals that are going to need to forage on that grass. And then He's going to create on the sixth day you and I, or our great-great-great-grandpappy and great-great-great-great-grandmama. And they're going to need food, and their kids are going to need food, all the way down to us. We're going to need it. So God has created all these things. He's prepared this earth for us to live on it. We are not, as Richard Dawkins would say, an irrelevant spot in the universe without purpose. And on that third day, He created all these plants, and 2 days later He's going to create all the pollinating insects and birds and all the rest of it, that someday in heaven, when we see the new heaven and new earth, we're going to see all of that working the way God designed it to work, and producing flowers that are going to make these, even though they're beautiful, it's going to make them look kind of wilted. So on third day He creates the grasses, and I believe that includes the grains, the herbs, which shrubs, berries such as that, potatoes, for those of you who are Scottish and think that a potato is ambrosia, the nectar of the gods. And then fruit trees. I was never a big fruit eater, but I'll eat an apple now and again, and a banana when it comes my way. The grasses were the ground cover for which to feed the animals that graze. And everything was in place. He didn't forget anything that was needed. He also created the herbs, the shrubs and bushes that produce fruit, and the trees that bear fruit. Now, I want to tell you something. It's just between you and me. It's nowhere in Genesis chapter 1 that God created Brussels sprouts or kale. I don't know where they came from. I'm just saying, you draw your own conclusions. Notice that there's a lot of vegetable life in Genesis 1 that's not mentioned during that third creative day. Moses, in writing Genesis, put in there the things that an agrarian society would need to keep their animals right, to provide plant-based food for themselves. And believe it or not, with teeth like these, we're supposed to be mostly plant-based. It'll be 2 more days before God creates the animals and man, and we arrive on the planet, but everything on earth is ready. Next time the stars and the planets are going to be created. That's another day and another day differentiation. Right now, on the third day, all there is that energy and light and material that's out there. No stars and planets. I don't care what your astronomer professor tells you. This is how it is. And when we get to heaven, everybody will say, wow, Robert, you were just dead on there. Well, I'm not dead on. All I'm doing is telling you what the Bible teaches. And the Bible is always true. Always true. Now, let me ask you, if you would, before we get to the next topic, which is the creation of the spatial universe out there, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to this channel and click on that little bell that you'll get a notification when each time I put out a video. And I'm not getting them out every week like I was hoping to do, because some of this takes so much research. I've read so many books about astronomy and physics and quantum mechanics, and Albert Einstein. I read his book. Not so good. And I've read stuff by all kinds of physicists, and they don't impress, for the most part. So also, if you like this video, would you click the like button down below? If you didn't like it, you can click didn't like it, but let me know why. And if you have any questions about the creation or what it was created for, put that question down there. I'll get to it. So until next time,